Welcome, Space Pirates. I am your captain, the Dread Pirate Dr. Disaster, and today we're going to be talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Decidedly Bad Movie Making, which is going to bomb. As we've talked about on this channel several times already, the people who go out of their way to defend Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm at every turn, the movie critics, those people, not enough of them can bring themselves to lie and claim that they like this movie. It is currently sitting at about 49% on Rotten Tomatoes for the critics. But now, it gets even worse. The first box office projections for the film are available, and it doesn't look great.
Hey, what's that you got on your face?
Huh? Blah, blah, blah.
See how that works?
Naturally, the media is doing what the media does. They're attempting to spin this so that Disney doesn't look so bad. But I'm going to cut through their bullshit for you. We're going to look at their production and marketing costs and line them up with this new box office prediction to see what the numbers look like, along with dig into one of my favorite metrics to see just how unpopular Lucasfilm garbage is these days. But before I dig in, I wanted to hear what you guys think. How much is this Fleabag, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Indiana Jane movie going to pull in at the box office? Drop your thoughts in the comments. As for me, I think it will be an absolute dumpster fire.
Burn, baby, burn.
Alright, let's take a look at this article here from fandomwire.com. Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones 5 likely to dethrone Marvel's Ant-Man 3 in box office performance. Well, dethrone, well, that sounds like Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones is going to take down a very powerful rival. Dethrone is a word that you use to describe someone who's sitting on top of a heap and gets pushed down by an upstart, somebody who takes over. But, as you may remember, Ant-Man Quantumania did not do well. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania lost Disney roughly $40 million, by my estimation, something in that ballpark. So dethroning them shouldn't be too terribly hard. Marvel suffered one of its biggest setbacks this year upon the release of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, with the threequel bombing at the box office. Okay, so you just, in the very first sentence of this article, the shill media refutes their own title of this article. She refutes what she just said a moment ago. Dethrone, as I said, is a very specific word that we use to describe when someone at the top gets pushed down by somebody, by an upstart. That's what that describes. And then she immediately has to admit the fact that Quantumania bombed. So which one is it? We all know the answer to what this actually is. The answer is she is just shilling for Disney. She is trying to make things look as though it's not as bad as it actually is. Continuing on, not only did it fail to surpass the $500 million mark, but the Peyton Reed-helmed venture completely obliterated trilogy records among the Ant-Man standalone films, a truly dismaying time for Disney. I'll bet you that really hurt her to have to type in. As for the studio's forthcoming Indiana Jones project, one can only hope it does better at the box office than Ant-Man 3 did, which it just might. It just might. It might not, guys. That's the thing that we need to take from this here. It might not actually beat Ant-Man 3. They're trying to put a positive spin on this, but it is very possible that Ant-Man 3 will actually do better than Indiana Jones 5. For perspective, let's look at the total box office for Quantumania. $476 million is what they made worldwide. $476 million. So they're saying it's possible that Indy will not beat $476 million. That would be cataclysmic for Disney. We're going to dive into why that is in just a couple of minutes, but let's continue on the article a little ways here. Harrison Ford's last run as the iconic archaeologist is less than a month away from its silver screen premiere, and if early reviews are anything to go by, then the future of Indiana Jones 5 is looking bleak. So how is it going to dethrone anybody? I just can't get past that word usage. That's just awful, awful. They know that most people won't read past the headlines. Most of the mouth breathers and crackheads who defend Disney at every turn are going to look at the headline and go, well, we all know that Ant-Man was awesome, and Indiana Jones is going to dethrone them. So, nope, you guys don't understand. Indiana Jones, it's going to be an absolute massive blockbuster box office film. Obviously, that is not the case. At least critics didn't seem all too thrilled about the latest installment in the long-standing franchise after its Cannes debut. But reports claim that the movie won't be subjected to the same fate in terms of its box office reception. As per predictions laid down by Box Office Pro, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is believed to churn more numbers in the domestic circuit than Disney's latest flop, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, did. During its paltry run at the cinemas, the Paul Rudd-led superhero film managed to amass merely $214.4 million domestically against an exorbitant budget of $200 million. In comparison, Indiana Jones 5 has been predicted to gross a minimum of $225 million at the domestic box office and about $380 million on the higher end. If we look at the Indiana Jones franchise, the fourth installment in the swashbuckling film series has been the highest grossing addition yet. And then they go into compare all the different Indiana Jones films and what they made back in the 80s and then about 15 years ago with Crystal Skull. And they're trying to spin this so that Indiana Jones 5 looks like it's some kind of a great success because it's going to beat the movies from the 80s. Of course, they won't take into account inflation. They won't take into account the fact that people paid a fraction of what they're going to pay today for movie tickets. So this is just spin. They're trying to make it look like this movie is going to do gangbusters. But you know what? I have the receipts. Because what they don't want to talk about and what they don't want to emphasize is what those movies cost back in the day. Well, I do want to talk about what it costs for Indiana Jones 5. As many of you may know, the budget for the Dial of decidedly bad filmmaking is $295 million. It cost them $295 million to make this thing. With most movies that Disney puts out these days having a minimum of $100 million spent on advertising. The advertising budget at a minimum is going to be $100 million. So that means $395 million Disney pumped into this film. That means that they need about $800 million to break even. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to say it again, the way that is figured in is typically the movie theaters take about half of whatever the box office is. The crackheads and the mouth breathers who want to disagree with all these numbers, who go, no, it made $800 million, so obviously it has to be profitable. No, at $800 million, they will have broken even if they were to get to that number, which I very severely doubt. At $800 million, they will have broken even because half of that money has to go to the movie theater. The crackheads don't realize what economics are. They don't understand economics. The movie theater isn't going to just give all the money back to Disney. They have to take some of their own. Otherwise, why the hell would they do it? It doesn't make sense. Movie theaters have to make money too. This is how this works. You don't get to count the money that the movie theater takes home as profit for Disney. Disney in that case will have netted $400 million. And since at that point they will have spent $395 million, they would have gotten $5 million in profit at that point, assuming that they had a $100 million advertising budget. And I don't think they'll come anywhere close to $800 million, personally. I think we're probably looking at around $600 million, in which case they will have lost a massive $200 million on this movie. I'm giddy at the thought. I cannot wait to see these idiots flounder here. Alright, but let's do something really interesting here. Let's compare Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny to Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, one of its contemporaries. Let's compare it to one another on one of my favorite charts to look at, Google Trends. If we go back a few months here, you can see this spike here, the line in red represents Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. That is how often this search term was searched for on Google. Now, Google does not let us know the exact number of times that it was searched for a particular term, but if you compare terms to one another, they do show percentages. They show, how much a term is searched for in comparison to another term. So this spike in red, this one at the very top, that's the week of February 12th through the 18th. That is the week that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania came out. The red represents Ant-Man. The blue line represents Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And Ant-Man, of course, naturally spiked and is pretty huge. The week that a film comes out, or a show, or whatever, that is the week that search terms are always at the highest. So I'm not trying to say, oh, look at Indiana Jones is nowhere near as popular as Ant-Man. I'm not trying to say that. What I am going to look at, though, if you look at the weeks leading up to the film, if you look at, let's see here, the week of January 22nd through January 28th, that is just a little under a month before the movie came out. Ant-Man and the Wasp, that is to say, you will see that Ant-Man and the Wasp is at 10% of its peak. If we go all the way over to the very end, on the right, we can see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is at 8% of Ant-Man and the Wasp's peak. Meaning that right now it is less popular than Ant-Man and the Wasp was at the same time frame leading up to its film. There is less buzz for Indiana Jones than there was for Ant-Man and the Wasp. That is not a good sign. Not a good sign at all. I mean, they're comparable. We're talking about a couple of percentage points, and this is an imprecise way to look at the popularity of something. I'm not trying to make it sound like this is 100% ironclad, this is less popular than Ant-Man, but it is interesting. I find it interesting. I use this a lot because it's illuminating, and it's often a way to predict box office scores, I have found. And then let's throw in another comparison here, just to give you an idea how dismal this is for Disney and the like. We're going to throw in a third search term. Let's look at The Little Mermaid. The 2023 Little Mermaid film. If you look at it here, now those dotted lines on the very end, they always just show those dotted lines so that you understand that they have partial data available at this point, but those are their projections, meaning that Ant-Man and the Wasp, at its peak, which is comparable to Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is tracking along similar lines for popularity, for hype, as Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, Ant-Man at its peak is at 55% of Little Mermaid at its current peak. So they are half as popular as Little Mermaid, and the Little Mermaid is not doing well, to say the least. And this is actually something I've been wondering if I should cover a little more often. I usually focus more on like Marvel and DC and Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but I've been wanting to branch out and maybe talk about some of the other topics like The Little Mermaid, for example. If you guys think that would be something that would be interesting to dig into, to look into, like the box offices and stuff of The Little Mermaid. I know it's not something that we're probably as into in this space, but I find find it interesting. If you guys would be interested in that sort of thing, let me know. Drop it in the comment section. If I get enough people who think that they would be interested in digging into this stuff a little more often, I might do that. But in any event, if we look at this article from MovieWeb, is The Little Mermaid a box office success? Basically, if we, skip through most of this article because, I don't have time to go through all of this with you, the answer is no. And even this article says so. This article actually does a pretty good job of going right down the line. I will drop a link in the description for this particular article. I recommend giving it a read. They do a nice job of really not taking any sides. They're just giving us the numbers. I actually really liked this article. I think they did a nice job. It was really well written. But we'll just look at the last paragraph of this thing. Regardless of the reasons for the backlash and the film's box office performance, the numbers don't lie. The Little Mermaid, which has presently grossed approximately $326 million at the worldwide box office, is a box office failure for Disney. The only remaining question is, will the box office performance of The Little Mermaid and the intense backlash that Disney received for the film affect Disney's approach to their future film and television projects? And we can only hope so. We're tired of this woke stuff. It's not performing well globally. You may or may not know that The Little Mermaid only made, in its opening weekend, like 2.6 million or so, less than 3 million in China. In a country with 1 billion people, they made less than $3 million on The Little Mermaid because they don't like this stuff. They don't want you to change the way that these stories were told. Nobody wants this except for the few ideological, mouth-breathing crackheads that are the wokesters that have pushed their ideas into the forefront and have ideologically captured companies like Disney. Those are the only people, and that is a small percentage, mind you, of the total population of the world. Those are the only people who want to see this crap. Nobody else does. I'll leave it there. You have a good one, guys.
Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.